RMT, real money transactions. This is something that's commonly talked about not only in Lost Ark, but pretty much in all of MMO gaming. There's only one game, one community where I don't hear anything about RMT. That is Final Fantasy XIV. And the two reasons why that is because their currency, Gil, basically has no value. The second being that there are chase items, everything that people want, you have to earn it. But even in that scenario, I'm sure you can pay people to carry you through content. So there is technically probably RMT there too. And the only other time you don't see people talk about RMT is when the game is so niche, so dead, that it's not profitable for people to try to make money off of this. So as you probably know, Lost Ark put up a post about combating RMT. So as somebody who's played a lot of MMOs and seen a lot of RMT talk going on, I thought I would talk about RMT and just kind of how it is, why it's so big, and various methods I've seen of trying to combat it. So before I go any deeper, I want to say, do not RMT. They are taking actions against it. Trying to flex somebody over your gear isn't worth it when you're going to lose that character soon. It is not worth risking your account for. So there's really four types of sellers. The first being piloting services, which is paying somebody to play for you, which is usually hell mode content and getting like deathless. Another is a person who actually plays the game and just has excess gold. And this is something that I've been told that a small portion of the bussing community does. It shouldn't be surprising that people that bus make an excess of gold. And I have heard stories of some of the people who do bus do sell a portion of that gold. Like if you look at a Brel 2-3, so at 5,000 gold for the bus, 6 passengers, which means 2 drivers, they will be getting 15k per run. That is not including if that's a gold character, so they're making gold on their own. And also they can just have a bunch of characters off their roster that don't make gold that they can just still run. But again, the word is that this is a very, very small portion of bussers, so don't go on a bussing witch hunt. So one of my static members used to pug clown all the time. He found this guy who runs 6 bars and he just constantly started running them. He friended him and then they started doing weekly runs together. Eventually this guy was like, hey, by the way, I'm a gold seller. I'm a rice eater. I have multiple accounts. I just run this stuff for gold. Since you're helping me, I'll sell it to you at a discount. And he was just like, yeah, I live in Taiwan and I make a lot of money off of this. This is my job. The most common one, the one we always see, is the botters. And obviously, since we're talking about RMT, this is all about money. So let's talk about that. So as stated earlier, that guy who's making a living off selling gold came from Taiwan. Thailand is another popular region that is known for RMT and botting. If you've been keeping an eye on Throne and Liberty through canon, you probably know that he's constantly fighting with a Thai guild that does a lot of botting. So when talking about money, I decided to talk about Thailand, mainly because I am part Thai, so it's more interesting to me to look into Thailand. I also think that looking into botting is the most important one because of all the other things, that is the one with the most potential for scaling and just getting straight up out of hand. We've all seen the herds of warriors running around. But anyways, back in 2023, the cost of living in Thailand is 2.6 times cheaper than it is in USA. Their currency is called baht. Their minimum wage is 328 to 354 baht per day. That comes out to $10.20 a day. So I have two different sources when it comes to the bare minimum of cost of living in Thailand. The first is a little bit more dated from a few years ago, and they say it's going to be about 9,000 baht a month just to exist basically. And another is a travel site, so they listed in US dollars because they're talking about traveling to it. And they say it's going to be about 650 US dollars as your floor to just get by. And while that is a bit of a gap between the two, but these can also be really different price quotes depending on where they're located in Thailand. So I'm just going to use these numbers as a good ballpark area. So the next step is to look at the rates. I'm not going to say where, but right now, as the time of recording this video, we're looking at $26.80 for 100k gold on East. So that ends up being about 958 baht. So 100k gold is 3 times the daily minimum wage. But to be fair, the people who farm the gold are probably just middlemen. They usually just sell the gold to whatever site it is, and then they just get a portion of it. But clearly they're making enough since it's still a thing. So say somebody wants to push their 19 weapon to 25. If you look at the maximum average and you put everything down to gold, well, everything but silvers and solars, because I don't feel like doing that math, you are looking at 7.5 million gold as your average to get from 19 to 25 on a weapon. In RMT, that comes up to $2,000. That converts to 71 to 73k baht. And again, if you look at their cost of living, that's a lot of money. That's going to get them by for a while, no matter which quote you're looking at. That's just for one guy getting one weapon. It's not including people who buy gold for cosmetics, gems, accessories, all their armors, quality taps, any other things like elixirs. The fact that this game has so much RNG just makes the demand almost never ending. Now, an elephant in the room is that one person is not likely going to be able to get all 73k of that. That one person, that one seller is not likely to have that much gold to sell, which is true for them starting off. There are videos out there showing that how much these kind of operations do expand to the point that they have 100 different clients running at the same time farming things, which is why I really wanted to talk about botting the most, because that's the one that you can scale. Now, obviously, when you do scale up, that means that it is going to cost more because you're going to buy more hardware and it's going to cost more electricity. But the fact that people do that just means that this, again, it's still that profitable for people to do it and justify those down payments. So they have these hundreds of fishing bots selling fish to you, taking that gold and selling it back to you. And that's even with a middleman site taking a cut. So that's 7.5 million. What does that look like in royal crystals? At 2,992 gold per 232 royal crystals, you are looking at 600,000 royal crystals. So you see that $100 pack for 12k crystals? Rounding up, you're gonna have to buy that pack 50 times. So that means you're spending $5,000. RMT is over half of that. And if you're talking about money at this scale, people are going to take that risk. And another reason why they're willing to take that risk, not because it's just a huge price difference, is because they don't really hear much about people getting punished for it. So let's segue onto that. Smilegate is aware that people don't think there's much punishment for it, and they address it in that post. So I quote, "There's a false perception that spending money in the game prevents significant disciplinary action when RMTing. The recent ban wave included users that monetarily invested in Lost Ark." So what they're saying is they're shooting their whales too, but I think the average person just has the idea that nobody really gets punished for it. Now there is this saying that people fucking love to quote, and that is, "No kingdom ruled through fear is a kingdom worth ruling." I don't think that really applies here. At this point, I think the average MMO gamer needs a little fear. And they have nothing to fear if they're not doing anything bad anyways, so whatever. Not only do I want them to say there's going to be more ban waves, but I really want them to make it public. In a lot of Chinese and Korean games, when they do these ban waves, they'll actually put out a giant list of all the people who got banned. Naraka Blade Point does weekly ban. Now they do censor part of the names, but still, I think it's good to put up that wall of shame. And also, even with partial censors, people are going to notice names that they see probably, and that helps show that, hey, these people are getting hit by it, that they are actually doing their job in banning people. It just makes the entire situation more real and not just like a post that people think, oh yeah, we're doing our job, don't worry about it, trust us, for real, for real. So at its core, the way to stop RMT is to make it not financially viable for them anymore, especially the people who make a living off of it. Since they had to sell the gold at a fraction of the price to make it worth the risk for people who buy, the best thing you can do is devalue the gold even more. So if they wanted to fight fire with fire by reducing the cost of royal crystals and things in the shop, buyers would be more enticed to buy it legit, which means gold sellers would have to sell it for even cheaper. And depending on what degree you devalue the gold to, they might just move on to another game. But of course, it's just not that simple. Since we've seen how low the cost of living is there for people in Thailand, for example, you would really have to significantly devalue the gold to be not as viable, which, as we know, AGS Smilegate would never lower it down that much. But I will say, I think that if you were to lower the price, you would actually convert more free-to-play players to actual payers, and then obviously people who RMT would actually just buy gold legit. I actually think some devaluing to RC and gold would actually be a good thing for all parties but sellers. So in my last video, I actually praised the concept of the mileage system, because it is something that incentivizes people to buy legit so they can buy things in the mileage shop. But I don't stand by the prices and the value that you get out of it in KR. $400 for an emote is still just robbery. So I still think like a modified mileage system would be good for us. Now it's kind of sad that I had to say this, but it's the most obvious one here. Having a team dedicated to snuffing out these bad actors. So if you look at the market, you see like amulet sales, for example, after this last RMT ban, you can see it's absolutely still going on. There is so many self-reporting going on in the marketplace that it's just ridiculous. And I know behind the scenes in the back end, they can see more than just those transactions. They can see all transactions. They can see everything that goes on. Like when people report bots, having actual people there to actually see that and then assess the situation and take action if needed. All these botters had to run through story. They have a script running through story. So I don't think it's unreasonable to have certain parts of the world being a little bit more monitored, because you're going to be pretty noticeable when you see 20 warriors or 20 of one class just bum rushing through an area, all with like just random letters of a name. And you know it, I know it, we all know it. Companies just don't want to hire that many people. To avoid paying for people, they just try to do automation scripts and their own bots and ways to just automatically ban people. And if you follow MMO gaming, you probably know where I'm going with this. Blizzard in World of Warcraft is the best worst example you could have when it comes to this. Currently, there's a lot of false banning going because somebody will buy gold and send that gold off to other people who did not buy the gold, just random people, streamers and stuff like that, and they will get banned for accepting that gold in the mail because it's all automated. When people send in tickets, they just get copy-paste responses. This is a perfect example of what not to do and proof that we still absolutely need a human element because the technology for it is not there to automate this kind of stuff. Because a moment ago, I talked about monitoring a high traffic area where bots are going to have to go through, but there might just be a random new player that's running along with them to just have to be there, and they're going to get shot too. When it comes to tracking and auto banning things in the marketplace that seem suspicious, they're eventually going to find out what the limits are around that, and they're just going to go around it, and whatever automation we would have to monitor that will be like, oh, it's fine. The one thing that I can think of that might work when it comes to automation and scripting would be something along the line of input reading. Because if all these bots are running the same script, they're going to be doing the same thing. However, there is one catch to that. Macro software has already circumvented this to a degree by having the option to put random milliseconds responses between the key presses. So I'm sure bots have done this too. Now, I think talking about payment model is something interesting because that is your cost of entry into making these accounts to do all this. And since so many games have gone free to play, there is no cost of entry. But when you pair a pay to play model, a cost of entry, plus a active banning system, that is a pretty big deterrent. Because if you can actively ban people before they're getting to the point that they can make gold and they have to pay money to play the game, that is going to make them quit quicker than it would on a free to play game because there is no cost of entry there. And then we can look back at World of Warcraft. That game is a pay to play game that is full of bots because they are just not doing enough actions to stop these bad actors. So what about taking this one step earlier in the process? A common argument and misconception that comes across in the Lost Ark community especially is how KR has the use of social security numbers to make an account. As a concept, it makes sense that it holds everybody accountable, but Zeus has talked about and shown that there are bots still in KR. And while RMT isn't as popular through websites, people still do it in personal transactions through something like Discord. Something like IP banning is absolutely useless because VPNs exist. Apex Legends and some other games do things like hardware banning. So what they do is they survey your computer, they take different part numbers, hardware IDs, and they just really assess your computer and make a profile on it. That way, no matter what login ID you're on, they still know it's you by the computer. However, if you know anybody who plays Apex Legends, they'll say they still see cheaters all around. When I looked into this, self-proclaimed cheaters on Reddit talk about how hardware bans mean nothing because they have software that will change their hardware IDs and just bypass it completely in a single click. And while I'm at it, I'm going to quickly talk about anti-cheat. Things like stat changing and speed hacking, those things absolutely do exist, and I really don't think anti-cheat can really stop things like botting that is just a script on the side that's not really modifying or editing game files. But the thing about anti-cheat is really that it only filters out a small percent. Historically, in pretty much all MMO gaming, anti-cheats and stuff like that, they just haven't been that functional. It's a really sad state of gaming. And at this point, I could go full Muda or I guess Har and just rant about how much I hate that things are installing at a kernel level or at ring 0 now. You know, actually there is a small purpose to talk about that. So kernel level, ring 0, things that run that deep in your system run before all your other software basically, which means things ran at ring 0 have access to absolutely everything. And it has gotten to the point for these cheats to be undetectable by anti-cheats, they had to install at that level. So that means you're giving shady people who make shitty software the access to the deepest level on your computer. So if anything bad happens to you for cheating, that's all on you because you decided to do that. At the end of the day, this is a pretty grim topic. For almost every point that I talked about in this video, I also had a counter argument for it, or really why it hasn't worked so far. The truth is, I don't think there's an absolute way to stop all RMT, but I think the best way to mitigate it and to really try to combat it as best as possible is to attack it on basically all fronts. There are many ways to go about it, but just not a single one works on its own. So I hope they can combine concepts like these and more to make their own secret sauce. I think giving proof that people are getting banned is good, while not also telling people how they're getting banned. You never want to give that information away, so ultimately you just had to make this not as profitable for people to want to do this, with things like devaluing their gold and just actively banning people. If you can ban these people before they make a profit, they're going to stop. They're not going to work for free, they're going to go off to another job, which in this case is another MMO. Sorry that MMO, but get out of here. So before closing out this video, I want to say this. I did my fair share of shitting on World of Warcraft and Blizzard today. But besides Lost Ark, World of Warcraft is my most played MMO. While I might not be a huge fan of what the game has become, I still love the lore and setting of Warcraft as a whole. It is generally a game I try every expansion because I just like Warcraft. Just because I like the game doesn't mean that I'm not going to shit on it for things that it's doing wrong. That's just how I feel about all of gaming. I love Lost Ark, but there are things they're doing wrong, and I think it is good to talk about that kind of stuff. Even if it is just wrong to me, just wrong to you, it is good to have these conversations, to have these opinions, to have them out there, because you're not going to move forward or change anything without any dialogue. So even if this video sounds kind of doomer that, hey, anything we try to do to stop RMT just doesn't work, I still think you can heavily mitigate it if you try hard enough with the right procedure. So that'll be it for this video. I had fun looking into things, and I hope you did too. Thanks for watching.